This is the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt.
Welcome to the last Rugby Ascendant Podcast for 2024. Chris, it's been a pleasure talking to you this year, man. I enjoyed it.
It has been. What are you kicking me to the curb? What's going on there? Is it over? We haven't even danced yet.
Chris, I'm just giving you a bit of a break and not even sending you to the sin bin, man. Come on, it's just
a
it's
break.
Christmas,
What's a break? I spent 36 and a half years in the Army. I don't know what a break is. I mean, Anyway, but yeah, seriously, it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it since we began collaborating. Oh, that sounds like something that people do during a conflict. Anyway, no, but ever since we began collaborating, working together, and when you came up to me there at Loftus at the quarterfinal, and with a very warm greeting, and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you," and I'm like, "Oh, what did I do now?" And ever since then, I think it's been a lot of fun. I think a lot of people enjoy our interaction. We have a good rapport, and I think we do good rugby coverage. But I'm biased.
No, well, so am I. You're a Stormer, I'm a Bull. So there we go. We've never made any secret of that.
Somehow we can still have a conversation.
Yeah, because the Bulls are decent people, man. I don't know about the Stormers so much. What do you think?
Oh, good Lord. Okay, let's get to the rugby.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Let's just talk about the Champions Cup quickly last week. The fact that the South African teams didn't draw that many people. I want to talk about that. The fact that do we belong in Europe? It's the whole old thing being dragged up against. Talk to me about that. What's your thoughts?
Well, it was another abysmal weekend. It was painful. Look, it's rare that I honestly, I mean, usually tennis or golf or something like that, I can watch. I'm like, okay, that's it. I've had enough. It's time to go exercise or read a book or do something or play a computer game or just do something productive. But it's rare that happens to me in rugby. And that's 2 weekends in a row. I'm sitting there because I made a commitment to broadcast the game. And I'm like, oh, will it ever end? Will it ever end? That's how I felt. I mean, 1 for 4 or whatever it was, 2 wins in 2 weeks. This is pathetic. And there's lots of reasons for it. But the bottom line is players didn't perform. We can talk about, lower level selections and experienced players like the Stormers and injuries. We can talk about how the Bulls just couldn't seem to make good decisions despite having the wind at their back. We can talk about all kinds of excuses. But at the end of the day, these are excuses and bad decisions by players on the pitch and maybe even the coaching staff. Who knows? But it was painful, so painful. And lots of people are talking about it. It's not just you and I. I mean, lots of people. I saw that Nick Mallett, along with Robbie Fleck and Hayani Shimangi, were talking about this and going on about the poor performance in Champions Cup and even asking the question, should we even be in the competition? I emphatically say, yes, we should be in the competition. And one of the biggest reasons for it is that as the South African sides participate with these teams in Europe and compete, if we leave the Challenge Cup and the Champions Cup, like the first season we weren't in it when we showed up in the URC, then it won't take long for the Europeans to start moaning and crying. Well, it's not fair. The South Africans get these breaks in the middle of the season. And then we have to fly all the way to Cape Town. No, that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So it's time, South African Rugby Union, to man up and get people bloodied, get the players bloodied, and bring them up at all these competitions. Start taking the Curry Cup more seriously. We saw that the past couple of seasons, and use these competitions. But I mean, it's not just Nick Mallett, Robbie Fleck, and Hayani Shimangi. Dan Bigger, the Wales national, also said some stuff about this weekend. He was saying that it's frustrating because they went all the way to Cape Town for a single game with Toulon, and it took 32 hours to get there. This is the problem. I have flown back and forth between Frankfurt, Munich, Paris, Amsterdam, London, all over South Africa, over and over again, dozens, if not a few hundred times. It's never more than a 12-hour trip. Quit flying to Dubai. Quit taking, dodgy, Ukrainian, Russian airlines to get yourself to South Africa and back and forth. That's part of the problem. But of course, in order to do that, you have to have money. And I think you're going to let us know a little bit about something about there might be a little bit more money coming the South African side's ways. But he's from Toulon. If the French teams don't have the money from the incredibly wealthy French performing teams, then what about the South African sides who have to deal with the misery of the weak rand?
Well, there's 2 things to what you said just now. I mean, they had to fly to Cape Town #1 for 1 game, and that's a big problem. Teams having to fly this far, regardless of how long it takes. We get to that just now. They should play both their games, overseas games, back to back. And that's something that John Plumtree also asked from the Sharks. Let us fly overseas and then play both games back to back, then we can fly back again. So then we can talk about how long that takes. I think it's probably to do with the fact that they use a sponsor for an airline, something like that. The big thing is that the South African teams are not shareholders in the Champions Cup yet. They'll only be shareholders from June next year, the next season. That means we'll get some money in, and it's going to ease the load in terms of flying, costs and the likes. But the point is, like you said, there are ways and means. I don't feel very sorry for Toulon. I mean, they've got all the money in the world. So if they take 32 hours to get there, they're being cheapskates. Pardon my French, but my French.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. 100%. That's on them. But I mean, but the problem with the Lions and the Stormers and the Bulls, not the Bulls so much, they've got wealthy backers, but those other, and the Sharks, but the Stormers, Western Province Rugby Union is insolvent. It's under receivership. It's essentially bankrupt and has been for a few years now. And the Lions don't have the money either. So, they're going to need somebody to pick up those flights. I mean, and here's the other thing. Look, I mean, the athletes are not special. They may dedicate themselves, they may perform, and we may really appreciate and be fans, which is short for fanatics. We may be fans, but they're just other human beings, and they're not entitled to special things. However, performing at the top level requires rest. It requires, short journeys. It requires recuperation time. If you're flying like I do, over 6 feet 2 inches tall, which is almost, it's just short of 1.9. It's over 1.9 or something like that meters. When you're that tall and your legs are jammed in the back of an economy seat for freaking 16 hours flying to Dubai or flying, that's insane. That really affects performance, and that cheats the audience. That cheats the fans out of the top performance. We shouldn't be able to listen to like the All Blacks whining about food poisoning in the 95 World Cup and then complaining about it again when they lost the next time, but even though nobody fed them. We should be dealing with the top performance on the pitch. And if that means that someone has to pay to put these guys in business class so they have the leg room and they can rest on a flight, then that's what they do. Or better yet, charter planes, at least for the final games of this thing, that sort of thing. But I'm back with you on this whole point. It's stupid to fly all that way for one game. We don't see, even during the Tri-Nations and the Rugby Championship, the sides don't go to one game in South Africa, one game in New Zealand. They go for a series of games, and they stay there for 4 or 6 weeks. Now, you can't do that unless you synchronize the URC calendars like the Bulls. I mean, if the Bulls had, 2 or 3 games in Europe just before the Champions Cup, and they played their first 2 Champions Cup games in Europe, then came home, and had home games, and then had the Champions Cup games, it would work better. I just think there's a huge disconnect between what EPCR and URC are doing and the French and the Premier League about scheduling these teams. It's just a lot of stupidity that could be done much smarter, in my view.
I think, the fact that South Africa is the only country in the world that actually plays rugby for 12 months of the year. And the Blues that you mentioned now is actually a good example. They were overseas, I think, for 3 or 4 weeks before the autumn series, the international started taking place. A lot of those players stayed behind to join the Springboks. And then they had to stay behind again to play URC Champions Cup after the Springboks. So some of them were away from home for 9 weeks. I mean, that is just crazy. That's not sustainable. That's one of the reasons I think maybe Champions Cup might not be such a good idea. Or if it is, maybe the Champions Cup should be rescheduled. Maybe make it after the URC, for example.
After this season, I've said that all along. That's been my point. It's ridiculous. You play 2 games and you take this 3 or 4 week break. We go back to URC. We go back to Premier League. We go back to the Pro 14, and then you come back for. It's so disjointed. It doesn't make any sense. You can't build enthusiasm for the Challenge Cup and Champions Cup until you get to the knockout round. And let's face it, all but 2 or 3 teams make it to the knockout round. Let's fix that. There's too many teams getting into the playoffs, so to speak.
Yeah, so the other solution might be, I see people asking that there must be 8 pools of 3 teams each only, and only the top team in each pool will go through to the knockouts, and it becomes a top 8 knockout and not a top 16 knockout. So that might work because there's a bit more jeopardy. Like you said, you can lose 2 games out of 4 and still make it to the knockouts, which makes it a bit of a, sort of a almost academic thing whether you win or not. I mean, that will put a bit more jeopardy in it and make it a bit more exciting. I think that's not a bad idea. I think also John Plumtree suggested that one.
Well, another thing too is the oddity of the Cheetahs playing in Amsterdam, not in Bloemfontein. That's just sucky. I mean, I get the logistics and the cost of it, but I mean, guys, unless they've rented a boarding house, it must cost them a fortune for hotels up there.
Yeah, that's because they're invitees to the Challenge Cup. They're not actually didn't qualify. So they and the Black Lions from Georgia were invited to take part. So they can either take part on the terms that the EPCR offered them or not at all. So
right, but they let the Black Lions play at home in Georgia in Tbilisi, and people have to go there.
because it's closer.
Georgia is not close. It's a long way from the rest
Yeah,
of
but
Europe.
it's just right there. I mean, it's not as far as Bloemfontein is. I mean, Bloemfontein is sort of, other end of the world in many more ways than one.
Look, I mean, South African Airways might not fly between different Amsterdam and South Africa anymore, but there aren't many airlines flying to Georgia either. Trust me.
I wonder how many airlines are flying to Bloemfontein, even if it's from Joburg or Cape Town for that. But I mean, airlines
Yeah,
have
well,
left in South Africa.
you fly to Joburg, then you fly to Bloemfontein from there.
Yeah,
There
but
you go.
with who? I mean, there's so many airlines. I don't know.
Fly SAF Air. Fly SAF Air.
I don't know if they actually fly there. It's probably going to be one of the smaller ones. Anyway, I don't know. I haven't been to Bloemfontein in ages, so I'm not going to go.
I have, but I drove there. And on the way back, the crappy Renault Quid that I had, I almost ran out of petrol. I was coming back. It's summertime with the windows down, the air conditioner turned off. There's very few hills, of course, coming back from Bloemfontein, trying to get up to Vanderbilt Park is where I was headed. And I was like praying there'd be another petrol station on the highway. And finally, there was one last it was an engine. I pulled in there, man. I coasted in neutral. I coasted right to the pump. And it took every liter that tank would hold. I was like, whew. And I was really frustrated because I was meeting up with Monty Jackson, the singer. I was going to his house to meet with him. And now I'm not going to meet Monty Jackson, but everything worked out. But I'll tell you what a sense of relief. I mean, I really had to go to the loo. I mean, I had about 3 liters to, that bladder warning light needed to be extinguished. And I'm standing there at the pump, telling them to pump it, making sure it's getting pumped, and I'm holding on. And finally I locked the quid up and I ran inside and took care of business. But woo, that was a close one coming. But Bloemfontein is a long way. It's in the middle of freaking nowhere. I don't know why. Look, I get why the 4 trekkers went right past it and went up further to Highveld. Oh man, it is in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, that's another story.
It's a funny thing that you talk about the Renault Quid in Bloemfontein. I actually rented a Renault Quid in Bloemfontein once, and I tell you, it wasn't fun. So you're an American, you're used to these big gas guzzlers with lots of power and stuff. I mean, that Renault's got no power. Sorry, we're getting a bit off subject here, but I mean, that's not a good car. Sorry to say that. How did you feel?
No,
that must have been an experience, huh?
Look, it's a horrible car, and whenever I show up at Avis, because I'm a premium renter because I travel so much, I go and I said, listen, if you give me a quid, I'm canceling this reservation right now. It's not going to happen.
Do the same. I do the same. I tell you. There's
Well,
no
look,
way I'm getting one of those.
That was an epic journey. That was in 2022 after the COVID restrictions were lifted. And I came back to South Africa for the first time in a few years. And I actually blew 2 tires on a road in Northwest outside of Rustenburg. There was a pothole in the road and I couldn't swing over to there's a car oncoming, and I was going like 40 kilometers. It wasn't going that fast, but it was a deep rut and it was a narrow one. So and I bent the rim on both of the tires and blew both the tires. And it was my Rainbow Rescue. The Indian tuck shop owner helped me with a couple tools, and Offer Khan's kids stopped and helped me. And then this colored guy stopped and helped me who had a truck full of tools because he worked for a farmer. And it was my Rainbow Rescue. It was all South African ethnicities helping me get rescued.
That is South African story if I ever heard one. Yes.
Got back on the road and went about an hour, went to a petrol station. This guy beat the living bejesus out of the rib with a ball peen hammer, and we put the tires back on. He's like, "You're going to be okay." And I'm like, "Brother, you got more faith in God than I do." But I drove another 3,500 kilometers on those tires. It worked. Anyway, to be fair, though, I did go to a proper place and get the rims properly bent back in shape a few days later.
Yeah, I know, but you know what? In Africa, you have to make do. There's a saying in Afrikaans that says "boer maak 'n plan." You know what that means. So
that's true. But you know what? I hear they play rugby in South Africa, so we should get back to that.
Yeah, we should. I was about to, but yeah, that was a bit nice little sidetrack there. But anyway, so the big thing last week, I think nobody expected the Stormers to do well. The Sharks didn't send this second string team as well. So yeah, the fact that they lost, nobody really expected much from those games. Lions were supposed to win against their opposition, and they did. I don't think they did that well, but I mean, at least they won. The Bulls were, however, supposed to win against Northampton Saints. Northampton Saints are the English Premiership champions. They're a very good team. But the Bulls had 70% possession, 60-something percent territory, yet they didn't manage to beat Saints at home. I mean, that was a bit of a disappointment. Let's be diplomatic. What was your thoughts on that game?
I thought the Bulls' performance was absolutely wretched. So I kept note of this here. Here's my notes. You can't see them on the screen. During the game, these are notes I made. Yeah, okay. 10 visits to the 22, 7 points. Later in the game, 16 visits to the 22, 14 points. And those points, if I recall, were generated from outside the 22. It was, the guy ran in the 22. Let's see. 3 points turned down with the wind at your back. Easy 3 points in front of the post. Dumb. 7 points messing up possession inside the 5-meter line. 3 points, another penalty, easily convertible turn down. Then Johan Hussen dropped a try crossing the line unmolested. Then we have an obstruction for, I think they were double banking inside the 5 meters and a line out. That's another wasted try. And then another 3 points. The Bulls either screwed up or turned down 30 points in the first 30 minutes of the game. And that's why they lost this game. They had no composure. They made dumb mistakes and stupid decisions. At halftime, I'm like, if Jake White is not ripping the captain's backside about what's going on here, I don't know what's going on. Now, to be fair, Elric Lowe was the captain in this game. He's a fantastic young player, so I'm not going to beat Elric up. But, he became Captain Obvious when he responded to how the game went. Some of the quotes: "We should show a bit more composure as a team." You think? I thought we built great momentum and we were all over them bossing the possession. Yes, but no points on the board, so it really doesn't matter what you did. We didn't capitalize on it, and I feel like we should have gone one more phase and that we're overeager at times, basically pulling the trigger too early. We should just be more patient when we have those opportunities. I agree with all of his statements, but to me, that's Captain Obvious. And the point here is that the Bulls they were really terrible. And they were. It's in all aspects of the game. And I got to tell you, and I agree, I think it was Nick Mallett that said this, Northampton was like they won the World Cup. They're like, oh, did we win this game? I can't believe we actually won. We came all the way down here. We beat this team with all these Springboks on it. They just stunk the place up. I'm not beating up the Bulls. I'm not a Bulls fan, but I'm not. If any objective observer said that this was an atrocious performance. And people want to blame Jake White. Okay, fine. I don't know if you want to blame Jake White. I want to blame the performance on the pitch and the decisions. When you're playing a game, this is not, not to beat up on the Curry Cup, but it's not a domestic competition. You're playing top teams in the Champions Cup from Europe. You need to put your best foot forward. And it's not just the Bulls. I've noticed in every Champions Cup game, every single team, South African, European, they're all arrogant in this competition. They all, no matter what, right in front of the post, 20 meters out, they kick to the corner every time to start the game. And then they fall behind, and then they finally start going for the points. You got to use common sense and have rugby IQ. When someone gives you a penalty 16 meters in front of the post, you take it, unless the defense has been absolutely atrocious and you're just bullying them around. And that's not what's happening here. The Bulls left too many points on the pitch, and this is one of the reasons they lost. And it was very disappointing. I struggled to find anybody who I could consider man of the match in this game on the Bulls side. Nobody had a really good game. I'm sorry. And I was curious. Rowan Framak left with a head injury assessment. I'm trying to remember. Did he come back? I think he came back. Yeah, he did. He came back in that game. I was very concerned because it seemed like he was gone for a long time.
No, he came back. I was there. I was at Loftus. I watched it, and I actually noticed him coming back. I think you mentioned the man of the match, and I asked Jake this question after the game. Cameron Honeycomb versus Jano Augustus, the eighth man for Saints, who's now going to Ulster, but ex-Stormer, and also in the talk for maybe, getting a call up to the Springboks. And the thing that I noticed is how big Augustus was, but also how well Cameron Honeycomb stood up to him, number one, and how well Honeycomb actually played. He had a brilliant game, and he was man of the match, I would think, deservedly.
Okay, I misstated that. I got the Stormers game stuck in my head. Yeah, Hanekom did have a brilliant game, but he was the exception. In fact, I'm looking at my notes here now, and he's the only one I actually wrote anything positive about their performance. It just wasn't there for the rest of the team. It's just disappointing. Yeah, Hanekom is really, really developed into quite a quality player, and he's really pushing for that jersey on the Springboks to be his full time. It's a nice thing for Rossi to have to deal with. But I think that he's got a lot of depth in that 6, 7, 8 part of the pitch.
Well, we've spent the past week talking about the Bulls in great detail on many of these shows. So I want to talk about the Stormers a little bit. It's your team now. And for the first time in a long time, there seems to be a bit of a glimmer of light, a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully it's not a train. But some of your players are coming back, your injured players. It's looking like you might maybe, have a bit of luck in a shove in the back, pull this one off against the Lions. That's looking better.
Yeah, Sasha Feinberg Omzulu is back. I'm sure, hopefully Rossi's not mad at him anymore because he kind of, I guess, hit the extent of his injury, and that was news fodder. But Sasha's back. That will be a huge boost for the Stormers. Dion Faria is reportedly back, although apparently he may start off the bench. I'm really excited. I'll tell you, I'm a fanboy. I'm a huge Dion Faria fan. I was so angry that he was never called up. And also, it's like Jan Serfontein. I'm a big Jan Serfontein fan. I think he got cheated out of 100 tests for the Springbok. Anyway, but when Dion Faria was called up, and then his performance in the World Cup, what he did was just unbelievable. He was Mr. Utility to everything, even playing hooker in the championship game. So Dion Faria coming back, I'm excited about that. He's been out for 9 months. Franz Malherbe is back. He's been out for a shorter period of time. Ben Jason Dixon also a short period. So we got Sasha, Dion, Franz, and Ben Jason Dixon all coming back. That's going to make a huge impact. But there's still a lot of Stormers. Always Stormers, Springboks. Hey, there's still a lot of Stormers that are on the sidelines. Stephen Kitzoff with that near, life-threatening injury. Evan Ruis out with a shoulder injury. Dan Duplessis, Ben Loader, Damon Willemse, Monty Libak. I don't think we're going to miss Monty too much, but KK Maraba, all these guys are out. And I think the Evan Ruis, Dan Duplessis, and Damon Willemse injuries are the ones we really miss. Those guys are really needed in that lineup. So I think that we'll see. I'm not all excited about how they're going to do this weekend. And also, I got to be honest with you. For me, when it comes to URC, when the South African sides play each other, it's a mixed bag. I mean, I love to see the Bulls and the Stormers go at it. That's always fun, especially in Cape Town. But honestly, I actually prefer it in Loftus because it's great when we beat them in Loftus. So but that's really exciting. But at the same time, they're cutting each other's throats. So I find myself in the opposition of not rooting for the Bulls, but if the Bulls win this weekend, my feelings aren't going to be hurt because I want the South African side to be near the top of the log. And if the Lions beat the Stormers, I won't be crushed. I'll be disappointed, but I won't be crushed because the Lions are in playoff contention. The Stormers, their season's written off unless they win every game from here on out. And I don't see that happening. So it's an odd situation for me where I find myself. But you know what? It's South African rugby. So whoever wins, I'll be having a good time.
Yeah, sure. Sure. The Stormers lose, you're going to be okay with that. No, I'm kidding. I hear you. It's not going to be a surprise if they lose, but I can't see them losing this game. It's a home game. They've had so much pressure. The players are back. They've been doing well. They've got best line-out stats in the URC. That says a lot. The locks are doing well. JD Schikkeling is back. Ruben van Heerden is now at 5. He's sort of running the line-outs. He's doing well. There's a lot of things that just might click, And I mean, the Stormers are a better team than being 13th on the lock. Let's be honest, 2 from 6.
Oh yeah. No. That they should have won 2 or 3 games that they lost. I mean, and then they're right up there in competition for that 6th or 9th position. Yeah, no, they're not a 13th ranked team, but that's where they sit on the log. And they got to stop losing these games early in the season. That's been a trend for them all along. Remember the first season, they come out, they're leading by like 28 points and then lose the game. They never score again. Then they're winning by 21. I was like, what's going on here? So they have this bad habit of starting off the season poorly. You can't do that. You've got to get some victories early. And you've also got to go to Europe and at least win 1 or 2 games. You can't go up there and lose 3 or 4 games. It's crazy. And so the Stormers have got to get that winning attitude in place earlier in the season. It's great to come back late in the season, and it's actually wonderful to gel late in the season because a mediocre team can actually win the championship by gelling and performing late in the season. But if you are 3 and 8, you're not going to get there.
No, others are going to be too far ahead. No, I agree. The problem so much, I don't think that the problem with the Stormers are the players so much. Yes, it's been a challenge. Yes, they had to send young players. I mean, I've never heard of JC Mars, for example. He played for the Stormers last
year. I have. You got to watch Curry Cup, brother. You got to watch Curry Cup.
I did watch Curry Cup, and I still can't remember him, So I'm just saying.
That's where I learned about Ethan Wenzel and Yuri Mattia and all these guys.
Yuri Mattia, definitely. And I want to talk about him just now in terms of, the Bulls needing a fly-off. But the point is,
no, you can't have him.
I want him.
We let Cade Volhuter go.
No, he's got the lines. He can stay there. I want Yuri Mattia. I think he's a good fit, physical, fast, good kicker. Him and Sasha played well at center. Sasha played center. He played at 10. We need a proper fly-off at the Bulls, but let's leave that for now. I want to talk about the Stormers not playing a proper game plan. Offload. Warwick Galant making some sort of fantastic try. You're trying to do something fantastic and screwing it up. They need to settle down, play rugby properly, simple, get back to the basics with the right players. They can come back into this competition. If they continue doing what they're doing now, it's not going to happen.
Two things about the Stormers' performance. The Stormers and Province, historically, since I've been a fan for a number of years, have been a strong defensive team. That does not appear to be the case right now. Far too often, they seem to be having leaky defense and making dumb mistakes. Tries that they gave up in that last game, I just shook my head. I mean, you could see it was coming from a mile away. Players were way out of position. They didn't support each other very well in defense. I don't know what's going on, but the defensive coach needs to sit down with these players and shake some of the rattle out of their brains because they're just not performing. Maybe it's because it's a mismatch of players, but that's an excuse. You still train, you rehearse, you practice, and you should know where you're supposed to be. That's a big part. Rugby is a team sport, and you got to know where the other players are. You got to know where your role is. I love when I watch rugby and the camera comes out and you see it from the whole field, and you see after a tackle players getting up, ensuring that the player doesn't get up, make sure there's a ruck for him, get up and then quickly retreat back to where they're supposed to be and cover gaps and direct. I love that about rugby. You know you're in trouble when the players are kind of lingering around and gravitating towards the middle of the pitch, and then suddenly there's three open players out in the wing. And we see that a lot with the Stormers right now, and it's very disappointing to see that. They look like the Bulls. I'm so sad to see that. And then,
You wish.
and then so that's part of it. But look, I mean, the Stormers have been known in recent years for being a flashy, fast team. You know, when Siabatla Sanatla switched over from the blitz box to playing for Stormers, he was just lightning fast, but he had that wicked car accident and nearly, I guess he nearly died in that thing and nearly lost his arm. But when they came, so we had that. Leyland Zas, the first season URC, he was like the Tasmanian devil. He was the top try scorer. He's everywhere. And that's not happening now. So the flash isn't there. I don't know why. I have no problem with the Stormers being a flashy team and scoring 60 points a game. I love that. But they're not executing it properly, like you said. And Warwick Khalant is trying too hard, and he's making dumb mistakes. He's not the only one. It's just it's very disappointing. But look, hey, we all go through troughs. It's peaks and valleys, and the Stormers will come back and reign supreme. It's just a matter of a little bit of time.
Yeah, another 10 years or so, things will be back to normal, I'm sure.
Dream on. 10 weeks maybe.
The other team on that pitch is going to be the Lions, and they started very well. They're fifth on the log at the moment. They lost 2 games in a row in the URC now against Leinster and Munster. I mean, you can't really say that was bad. I mean, those are 2 top teams. They've been a bit poor defensively. Jacques Foury's defensive coach, he's not that happy with their performance defensively. And then also they've got Keon Horn back and Henko van Wyk coming back, both Springboks or Springbok material. So that's a positive. They basically, I think the only player that don't have available is Richard Kriel. So they're gonna be selecting a full strength Lions side against a more full strength Stormers side. I think set up to be a humdinger. I'm looking forward to this one.
I think so too. I think it's the game of the weekend, to be honest. There aren't many compelling. There's I think Edinburgh and Glasgow on Sunday might be a compelling matchup, but most of the games this weekend aren't that compelling. I'm actually going to cover that game on Sunday because there's only 2 South African games for me to cover this weekend because they're playing each other. I think you're right. It should be a humdinger of a game. It should be some Lekker rugby and they're at DHL Greenpoint. They're not out at Stellenbosch, so that's going to be nice too. But the Lions are in an odd position. To prove that they're legit, they've actually got to win this game. They've got to win this game. Three losses in a row are tough to take, even though there's been a break here in the action. But you're right. Look who they played. I mean, you can't beat the Lions up for going on the road and losing to Munster and losing to Leinster. I mean, that's a tough draw for anybody. That's a tough draw for an Irish side or a Welsh side, let alone a team from South Africa. But the Lions are the most improved team in the URC this season, and the worst regressive team this year has been Benetton. Benetton's gone completely the opposite direction while the Lions have come up, and it's great to see the Lions do this. But we saw this last year. We saw the spark of the Lions late in the season last year where it looked like they were going to be a team that could compete, and I predicted that they would make the playoffs this year. Even if they lose to the Stormers this weekend, I think the Lions are on pace to make the playoffs. I just love to see them finish in the top 4 so they get a home game, but we'll see.
You said this is going to be the game of the weekend. I think you forgot the test match going to be happening in Durban. In the Bulls and the Sharks. Conveniently forgot about it, I'm sure.
Is there a game at Kings Park this weekend?
Yeah, there is. Let me tell you about it. It's actually the Bulls, the URC finalists, twice, 3 tournaments.
So
based in Pretoria.
I have a question for you. Why are they the Blue Bulls? Do they hold their breath and pray for a good result? You've never heard that before, have you?
No, I haven't. I'm speechless.
They're the Blue Bulls because their fans hold their breath Turn blue and pray for a good result. Yeah. No, look, it's the friendly banter is always good. That should be a good game as well. And I think Sia Khaleesi's not in this game. I think
He
he's
is.
out for this one.
He is.
Yeah.
He's captain. No, he's not.
Oh, he is. He is.
He's at eight man again, which is now
Okay.
his position. Yeah.
All
Let me
right.
just double
I
check for
gotta,
you.
I gotta, I gotta read different news sites. I'm getting fake news there. Somewhere said he was
Yeah.
out for this weekend.
Yeah, Sia's eight is captain at eight, and then the team is out. Like I said, it's Ox. Bongi is injured, so Dylan Richardson starts, but Dylan plays for Scotland. We know that. Vincent
Yeah.
Koch, Jason Jenkins, and Emil van Heerden Eben is injured, which thank goodness for the Bulls, I would think. That's going to be a tough one.
Oh, that's what I'm curious. Eben is out. That's what I was. Eben, that's about. Not
Eben
not
is
Sia
out,
Khaleesi. Okay, yeah,
And then
okay.
Pepsi and Manu Tutuka and Sia at eight, which is an interesting thing that they've been playing Sia at eight. Interesting. Then Jaden Hendricks and Jordan, 9 and 10. And
Yeah,
Fassi
they seem sold in that combination. I'm not.
and then Fassi at fullback, and then of course they've got Sia Masuku on the bench, which is a good thing. And then they've got Mapimpi, Andre Estreisen, Ethan Hooker. I mean, this is a Springbok side in many respects.
Yeah, it is. And so the Bulls are. It's not going to be easy going to the Shark Tank.
It's going to be a tough game. I mean, Nick Hatton is there. He was captain for the Sharks in the Currie Cup. Cameron Wright is on the bench, and Durenza Julius, under 20 Springbok. He's on the bench as well. I mean, it's a strong team. The Bulls haven't announced by the time we're now recording this. We will see that on Friday. But the Bulls are a bit on the back foot a little bit, I think. A lot of pressure this week, people calling for people's heads. And yeah, like I said, I don't agree with that. I think it's uncalled for. I think it's early days. Bulls have won 5 out of 6 URC matches this season. The one they lost 23-22 because of a red card was never supposed to have been awarded and was overturned the week after. I mean, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater here. The Bulls are actually much better than people are giving them the credit for. Yes, they might not be firing all cylinders, but I mean they're third in the log. Let's call a spade here. They're doing well.
Oh, absolutely. And I've sung their praises multiple times this year, but at the same time, maybe the victories have not been convincing. So they need to improve and then be dominant. When they're dominant, then I'll sing their praises on a regular basis, because they should be dominant with the personnel they have, and then with the coaching staff they have. They should be dominant in this competition, even though they're top flight teams out there. But I tell you, look, it's getting really obnoxious to just watch Leinster destroy everybody every weekend. So I can't wait for somebody to pip them at the post and just take them down a peg, like we did last year at Loftus. That was great.
Remember the thing about Leinster? Just wait for the knockouts, then it's fine.
Of course, Leinster is basically the Irish national side, and like the Irish national side, they can't get past the quarterfinals in a Rugby World Cup. Ow, that's going to get some nasty emails, but it's true.
Definitely, yeah, but it's true. Like I said, no, I'm kidding, but you know what? It's interesting that Jake said the Champions Cup, for example, is Test rugby in club jerseys. But this match, I think, is pretty much a test match on its own in blue and black jerseys. I mean, these two teams are pretty strong themselves. I think the Bulls are in a slightly weaker position because I think the Bulls are not as good at 10 at the moment. I think it's a bit of a problem at 10. Johan Goosen, when he's on form, he's brilliant, and when he's off form, he's not that good. I mean, that's a pivotal position. I think the Bulls got a problem there.
Well, maybe you could convince Rowan Pinar to come out of retirement and play that role. You can switch between scrum half and fly half in the middle of the game.
That's a left field suggestion. Yeah, I must be honest.
Hey, look, I'm all about the unconventional. That would be unconventional.
No, clearly.
I mean, look, the Stormers had Devo Devanaga as the backup scrum half last week again. I love that. That was incredible. It was great seeing him come back from Italy. Really, it seems I've always liked that guy at scrum half. He's scrappy, and he's just a fill-in player. I guess they're playing him. It's a cash per game. But it's a cash per game deal when he fills in. But still exciting to see it. So, Franz Stead ought to be recovered from his injury. He doesn't have to coach the Cheetahs. He could come up there and help you out.
He likes Jake. Jake is one of his heroes. Like he said it many times before. He looks up to Jake because Jake gave him his big break, and when he has a problem, he phones Jake, and Jake always helps him. Yeah, maybe not a bad situation.
I mean, and Franz Stead at Loftus, I mean, you could try penalties from 75 meters away and make them.
Yeah, when they do those goal line dropouts, you can go for posts. You never know.
Exactly. Yeah, the Bulls would win on points like that. No, but seriously, I think you're right. The Bulls are coming in a little wounded to this game, but I think pride is wounded a bit too, and that might be a decisive factor. Jake got a lot of comments this week, and and a lot of people pointing fingers at him, and maybe that'll also make a difference here. Maybe Jake is got something to prove. He doesn't. And Jake White has nothing to prove to me. But some people are, asking questions, kind of like they're asking questions of Dobson in Cape Town. I think that, and it's like Plumtree. They were screaming for Plumtree's head, but look at the Sharks. They're so much better now than they were a year ago. They're still not there, but they're better than they were a year ago. But of course, when you buy all the players from the Stormers, what can you expect but excellency at some point?
Yeah.
Eben Etzebeth, see you, Khaleesi. Shall I continue? Anyway.
No, I hear you, but I mean, rugby is a professional sport at the end of the day. It's a job. People get paid. So if you get more money, you can buy better players. It's very simple.
I don't care. I'm a fan, a fanatic.
Listen, some interesting thing I read this week. Yeah. I would sort of test you being a Stormer supporter and everything else. There's a lot of talk about Dobbo maybe moving up to a director of rugby position and leaving the coaching to someone else. For example, Johan Ackerman, there's a lot of strong rumors about him a while ago, but now he's now going to be involved as a consultant with the under-20s. But Felix Jones, that name suddenly popped up from somewhere as a possible, maybe very improbable candidate for the Stormers. I think that will be a coup. What do you think?
Yeah, that is a bit of out of left field and discussion. The topic.
Well, better than Frans Steyn or Ruan Pienaar, but I mean, that's not that left field. Well,
I thought those were good ideas. You can see where my heart is. I love those players. They're fantastic. It's look, I mean, it's a thought, also talk about bringing someone back from Glasgow to coach in South Africa too, but that's not going to happen.
He's not going below the URC.
It's
going to be north of the URC. I'm telling you now.
That's I'm with you. He's not moving, but people would love to get him back. No, we'll see. I mean, look, I am not someone that's pointing fingers at the coaching staffs in general, and certainly not the head coach for either the Sharks or the Bulls or the Stormers. But a lot of people are right now, and maybe that's fair, maybe it's not. I think that players just aren't performing, and part of the problem is that the constant, mismatch of players coming in and out with injuries and picking different sides, that has an impact. Teams that play together and practice together consistently tend to know exactly where, it's when you see a team that's in sync, like when and I'll give him this, when Monty Libbok kicks that ball to a wing, he almost every time puts it in the perfect spot at the right pace for the. Now the runner's got to, also got to have the right pace, but that just gels. I mean, that is the one thing that saves Monty on the pitch. He's a quality player. It's just that he can't hit the broadside of a barn, with no wind. It's frustrating how sometimes you just can't kick, but he can kick on the pitch and distribute the ball. But I hope Monty's okay, because I'm gonna tell you what, I watched that hit again, and I'm just angry about that cheap shot that he took, and I'm surprised he can get a broken nose. I mean, because that was full on right on his nose. He was turned sideways. If he had a longer Roman nose, he probably would have got a broken nose. He's got a shorter nose.
Yeah, well, at least
probably saved him.
The other guy was banned now. I don't know. I can't remember how long, but he got a ban. So that's a good thing.
And Monty, I mean, it's reflexive. It's automatic. Falls to the ground, conscious with the ball, never let go of it. Got to give it back too. We didn't get a turnover out of it.
Yeah, no, it's like when you get shocked, your hands close up automatically. It's just the way it is. I hear you. Anyway, let's just get down to the bit of a forecasting side. I know you would like to win at DHL Stadium, but who do you think is going to win at DHL?
All right, in the interest of full disclosure, so don't mislead people, let me pull up my Super Brew, okay, and see what I've decided, okay, because I can't remember now. All right, what do we got here? So which game you want me to call first?
Let's do the Stormers because they play first, yeah.
Stormers by 5.
Stormers by 5. Do you think it's going to be a high-scoring game, or it's going to be a tough, intense?
I think it'll be a high-scoring game. It will be an intense battle, but I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think the game will probably be decided at the breakdown. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. Absolutely. All right, then the other one, the one that you're not aware of, the one in Durban. What did your Super Brew say there?
My Super Brew, I must have been drunk, says the Bulls by 7.
No, clearly. That's the first thing you've said that makes any sense today.
Do you feel the love? Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, no, I got the Bulls by 7 in this game. I think the Bulls are out to prove something this weekend, and the Sharks might be caught a little bit off guard by that.
That's a very good point.
The Sharks get lackadaisical at Kings Park. I've seen it too many times. They just get lackadaisical at home, and it's so. I think the Bulls can come in and steal one this weekend. So that's why I got them by 7. Yep. I don't even know their lineup. I don't even know their lineup, and I got them by
we don't
7.
know because it's not been announced yet. But I mean, I think
Right.
it's going to be pretty obvious. The one thing I'm concerned, the Bulls had some players play last week that weren't ready. They were still injured. I'm not going to mention names. They're not supposed to have been on the park. So hopefully that's not too many of them carrying over this week, because it was such a big game. The players sort of felt that they should man up and, go on the field and play for their team. And yeah, that's part of the problem we had.
There's one other game that's of interest that's not even part of the URC. That's the Gallagher Premiership. That's the English League. Leicester is hosting Bristol this weekend. The Bristol Bears have been very good this season. So just kind of an aside for people, it's a rugby show. That's an interesting game to see how Bristol does. If Bristol can win on the road at Leicester, they'll prove that they're legit this season. So
no,
anyway,
they won't beat Leicester. Andre is there.
Leicester.
Oh, Leicester Tigers.
Yeah, with Andre Pollard, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said, Andre Pollard, yeah. They're not going to beat them. Bristol won't beat Leicester. Andre Pollard's there, Andrew Liebenberg's there, Michael Cheika's there.
That's why I stop. People just love this Michael Cheika. I can't stand that guy. But
I'm just saying he's a good coach. Yeah.
Yeah, I dispute that. The guy's got a losing record almost everywhere. But anyway, but people love Michael Cheika for some reason. No, that's what I'm saying. If Bristol can win at Leicester, they'll prove they're legit this season. So that's I mean, and they have a good record, but they're gonna have to execute on the pitch. Look, I mean, I got a soft spot for Bristol because I watched the South African A side play them a couple years ago I was in the UK.
I remember. Yeah, Sasha played that game.
I was at that game. It was horrible. Couldn't generate any offense. It was terrible. And the Bristol Bears won that game. What a nice team store they have, by the way. Just a random point of thought there. I was one of my favorite team stores, all the kit they had in there and stuff. Unfortunately for me, I got there after wading through the crowd just a little too late to get the jersey that was for that day and the T-shirts. It sucks. But anyway, given that the Springbok A side was beaten decisively, it really didn't hurt my feelings, and I limped away from Bristol having an average experience.
So I might be wrong here, but if I remember correctly, that's when Sasha played. Sasha played that game. Is it against?
I don't recall. I remember a couple of quality Springboks were on the side, but only 2 or 3. Most of it was the experimental sort of squad. So,
and that's the coach that the team that Stick coached for that game. If I remember that. Anyway,
that sounds correct. Yeah, sounds correct.
All right, Chris. Listen, man, I need to get cracking on the editing now because I want to get this out still. So thanks for this. Thanks for the time. As always, it's been fun. I really enjoyed these talks of ours.
Yeah, me as well. So Merry Christmas to you and yours, and a safe holiday, and try to get in the Christmas spirit despite the fact that it's 40 degrees Celsius and there's no snow. We are going to get snow here in central Pennsylvania in a day or two. The temperatures are dropping below freezing. However, they're going to come right back above freezing. So I'm not sure the snow will last till Christmas. But whatever the case is, it is a traditional Northern Hemisphere wintertime Christmas. Enjoy your Southern Hemisphere oppressively hot summertime Christmas. And I hope
that's all we know.
Exactly. I hope that Santa leaves you something useful under the tree. And remember, if you've been bad this year and you get coal from Santa, you can donate to ESCOM. That way people have electricity.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. You know what they say about coal? Just apply a bit of pressure and it can turn into a diamond. Now, there's a cliche if you ever heard one.
A bit of pressure, a lot of pressure.
And several million years later. But anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, Chris, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yep. Cheers.
This is the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt. This is the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt. This is the Rugby Ascendant